June 14, 2001, western coast of Cuba. The research vessel drifted slowly across dark Caribbean waters as sonar equipment pulsed beneath the hull. At first, nobody noticed anything unusual. The sea was calm. Only the low hum of generators and the distant crash of waves against steel interrupted the silence. Deep below the ship, more than 600 meters beneath the surface, the remotely operated vehicle descended into darkness where sunlight had not touched for thousands of years. Then the screen changed. A technician froze. At first he thought it was interference, static, distortion, but the shapes remained perfectly visible. Straight lines, sharp angles, massive rectangular formations resting on the ocean floor. The room fell silent. One of the sonar operators leaned closer toward the monitor. Another adjusted the imaging scale, expecting the structures to dissolve into random geology. They did not. The outlines became clearer. Stone blocks, symmetrical pathways, shapes resembling pyramids. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Because underwater geology is rarely this organized. And yet here, buried beneath layers of darkness and pressure, the seabed appeared to contain something impossible, something constructed. The expedition was led by engineer Paulina Zalitsky and her husband Paul Weinsweig from Advanced Digital Communications. Their mission had originally focused on mapping the ocean floor for possible shipwrecks and geological surveys. Instead, they may have stumbled onto one of the most controversial underwater discoveries in Caribbean history. The sonar scans revealed enormous geometric formations spread across a large area of seabed near the Guanahacoibes Peninsula. Some structures appeared circular. Others resembled roads or plazas. Several looked unervingly artificial. And the depth created an even bigger mystery. If these formations truly were human-made, they could not have been built underwater. Sea levels during the last ice age were dramatically lower, but not low enough for most known civilizations to occupy regions now submerged at such extreme depths, which raised a disturbing question. How old were these structures? Or perhaps more importantly, who built them? As the remotely operated vehicle moved closer, the camera lights illuminated giant stone-like surfaces covered in sediment. The images were grainy. Shadows distorted the terrain. Yet certain details continued to trouble researchers. Some blocks appeared stacked. Others showed smooth edges that resembled cut stone. One formation seemed almost pyramid-shaped. The media reacted instantly. Newspapers began comparing the site to the legend of Atlantis. Television documentaries speculated about vanished civilizations swallowed by rising seas. Headlines claimed divers may have found ruins older than the pyramids of Egypt. But many archaeologists remained deeply skeptical. Underwater rock formations can easily appear artificial. Geological fractures often create symmetrical patterns. Still, not everyone was convinced by the skeptical explanation, because the sonar images continued to show strange repeating patterns. Long before European arrival, the islands were home to advanced maritime cultures including the Taino, Lucayan, and Carib peoples. They navigated vast ocean distances using enormous canoes carved from single trees. Yet much of their history vanished after colonization. Could traces of an even older culture have vanished beneath the sea long before recorded history began? At the end of the last ice age, rising oceans flooded enormous coastal regions across the world. Entire settlements may now rest underwater, hidden beyond reach. The expedition returned with more questions than answers. Because the deeper scientists looked into the Caribbean seabed, the stranger the story became. The deeper researchers investigated the site, the more uncomfortable the debate became. The mystery was no longer just about unusual rocks beneath the Caribbean Sea. It became a question about history itself. Weeks after the first sonar scans, additional imaging surveys were conducted near the western coast of Cuba. Engineers carefully mapped the formations again, attempting to eliminate technical distortion. But the shapes remained. Large geometric outlines stretched across portions of the seabed like fragments of a drowned landscape. Some appeared aligned in deliberate patterns. Others resembled terraces or foundations. One structure seemed almost road-like. Another looked disturbingly similar to a stepped platform. Then came the detail that fueled global fascination. Several formations appeared too large to belong to any known ancient Caribbean culture. If truly artificial, they represented something historians had never documented before. The Caribbean is often imagined as small island societies before European contact. But archaeological evidence paints a far more sophisticated picture. Long before Columbus arrived in 1492, Caribbean civilizations maintained extensive trade routes. Taino communities built ceremonial plazas and carved stone artifacts. They organized complex political systems across Cuba, Haiti, and Dominican Republic. Yet much of that world disappeared rapidly after colonization. Disease devastated populations. Spanish conquest dismantled indigenous structures. Sacred sites were abandoned or destroyed. Entire chapters of Caribbean history vanished within decades. Historians were forced to confront an uncomfortable reality. How much had already been lost? As underwater footage circulated, marine geologists offered alternative explanations. Some argued the formations were simply fractured limestone shaped naturally over thousands of years. Others pointed to volcanic processes capable of creating geometric underwater landscapes. Scientifically, those explanations made sense. Nature can create astonishing illusions. Basalt columns, tectonic fractures, and erosion patterns can appear almost architectural. Around the world, natural formations have repeatedly been mistaken for lost cities. But critics focused on one recurring problem: the apparent organization. Certain sonar patterns seemed strangely deliberate. Parallel alignments appeared in multiple areas. Some structures showed repeated angles uncommon in random geology, enough to keep the debate alive. Divers never physically explored most of the site due to its crushing depth. At more than 600 meters underwater, human descent becomes nearly impossible. Remote-operated vehicles remained the only way to observe the formations directly. That limitation created another layer of mystery. Every image arrived through darkness. Floodlights illuminated only fragments at a time. Shadows distorted scale. Sediment concealed edges. You never saw the entire picture clearly. Only pieces, fragments, enough to trigger the imagination. Some researchers quietly proposed a possibility few were willing to discuss publicly. What if parts of the Caribbean coastline had sunk far more dramatically than previously believed? At the end of the Ice Age, global sea levels rose rapidly as glaciers melted across the planet. Ancient coastal settlements worldwide disappeared beneath advancing oceans. Evidence of submerged prehistoric sites has been found near India, Japan, and the Mediterranean. Could the Caribbean hold similar secrets? But the Cuban formations presented a problem. The depth appeared far too extreme. For the structures to have existed above water, dramatic geological shifts would need to occur. Tectonic collapse, massive subsidence, catastrophic seismic activity. Difficult to prove. Still, something about the site continued haunting researchers. The Caribbean has always been a region shaped by disappearance. Hurricanes erase coastlines. Earthquakes destroy cities. In 1692, much of Port Royal sank into the sea during a devastating earthquake, swallowing streets and people in minutes. By the early 2000s, the underwater formations near Cuba had divided the archaeological world. Two camps emerged from the controversy. Some believed the structures represented nothing more than unusual geology. Others quietly wondered if history had overlooked something enormous. The problem was not the mystery itself. The problem was the evidence, or rather, the lack of it. In archaeology, extraordinary claims require something solid.
À carvet d'inscription.
The tool. Human remains. Pottery fragments. Anything to prove human activity beyond doubt. The Cuban site offered none of those things. Only sonar images. Only shapes in darkness. And yet, the mystery refused to disappear. Part of the reason lies in how human perception works underwater. In deep ocean environments, shadows distort scale and geometry. Floodlights create illusions. A natural rock terrace can suddenly resemble a staircase. Fractured stone can look eerily like walls. Marine geologists pointed to similar cases around the world. Off the coast of Japan, the controversial Yonaguni Monument sparked decades of debate after divers found massive underwater pyramids. Some researchers argued the structures were remnants of a lost civilization. Others insisted they were natural sandstone shaped by tectonic activity. The Cuban site seemed to fall into the same category. Mysterious enough to fascinate the public. Inconclusive enough to frustrate scientists. The Caribbean itself is filled with legends of vanished places. For centuries, sailors spoke of strange lights beneath the water, submerged ruins glimpsed near reefs, and islands that disappeared after storms or earthquakes. Indigenous oral traditions described floods, migrations, and lost lands. Most historians treated such stories cautiously, but myths are rarely created from nothing. Sometimes they preserve distorted memories of real events. Hurricanes, earthquakes, eruptions. Catastrophic loss was inevitable. Some researchers began revisiting ancient climate data. Sea levels rose dramatically after the last ice age. Entire coastal plains across the Americas disappeared beneath the oceans. Modern coastlines are temporary. Today's beaches and harbors are just the latest version of an ever-changing landscape. Thousands of years ago, Caribbean shorelines looked completely different. How many ancient sites remain hidden beneath the sea? Underwater archaeology is brutally difficult. Deep-sea exploration costs enormous money. Visibility is poor. At depths exceeding 600 meters, excavation becomes dangerous. Many mysteries remain untouched because humanity lacks practical access. Some analysts argued the structures were less symmetrical than reports claimed. Early news coverage exaggerated details, fueling Atlantis comparisons. Television documentaries amplified the mystery with dramatic music and CGI pyramids. Many archaeologists grew frustrated. Speculation can damage legitimate research. Real archaeology moves slowly, carefully, methodically, yet one detail kept bothering cautious researchers: the scale. Sonar formations appeared enormous, larger than ordinary coral. Wide areas with repeating geometric patterns. Not impossible naturally, but unusual. Why has no major expedition returned with modern sonar technology? Even now, more than 2 decades after the first sonar images emerged from the waters west of Cuba, nobody knows what truly rests on the ocean floor. That uncertainty still haunts the story. Because despite all the debate, the site was never fully explored. No excavación uncovered the inscriptions. No artifacts proved the existence of a lost civilization. No definitive geological study completely erased the mystery either. The formations remain suspended between explanation and possibility. And perhaps that is exactly why the world continues returning to them. In archaeology, most mysteries slowly fade once evidence appears. A forgotten tomb is opened. A ruined city is mapped. An inscription reveals the truth. But underwater discoveries behave differently. The sea withholds answers. It conceals details beneath sediment, darkness, and pressure. It destroys wood, corrodes metal, scatters human traces across shifting currents. Entire coastlines vanish beneath rising oceans, leaving only fragments behind. Sometimes not even fragments. Just rumors. Just shapes. You begin to understand why ancient civilizations feared the sea so deeply. Across the Caribbean, storms can erase entire communities within hours. Hurricanes reshape islands. Earthquakes split coastlines apart. Coral slowly grows over shipwrecks until history itself becomes part of the reef. The ocean is not merely water. It is a machine of disappearance. And yet, occasionally, it gives something back. A diver discovers ancient pottery inside a submerged cave. A fisherman pulls carved stone from deep water. A sonar pulse reveals impossible geometry beneath the seabed. Brief glimpses of worlds that no longer exist. Researchers now believe early humans reached Caribbean islands thousands of years earlier than once thought. Ancient migration routes stretched farther across open water than historians originally imagined. Indigenous Caribbean civilizations possessed advanced maritime knowledge to navigate dangerous currents, long before European ships ever crossed the Atlantic. In other words, the ancient Caribbean was far more connected than older textbooks suggested. That realization changed how archaeologists view the region entirely. Once you accept ancient people mastered long-distance sea travel, another possibility emerges. What else did they build that has not survived? Would decays quickly in tropical climates? Storms erase coastlines. Sea levels continue rising. Perhaps entire settlements vanished long before modern historians recorded them. Not mythical super-civilizations, not fantasy kingdoms. Just real human communities lost to time and water. And maybe among those forgotten landscapes lies the explanation for the Cuban formations. Or maybe not. Some marine geologists remain convinced the structures are entirely natural. They argue the human brain instinctively searches for patterns where none exist. Scientifically, they may be correct. But even skeptics admit something important. The Caribbean seabed remains vastly unexplored. Modern humanity has mapped Mars more thoroughly than large portions of Earth's oceans. Entire archaeological sites may already exist underwater without anyone knowing. Today, improved underwater drones and sonar systems offer new opportunities. Future expeditions may return to the Cuban site with technology answering questions researchers in 2001 could not. Until then, the site waits silently beneath dark Caribbean water. The ocean keeps its secret,